meeting to order. City of University Heights City Council meeting. Today is March 12th, 2024. And we'll have the roll call. We have 3 council members present. Lisa Moore, we have Tim Schroeder, and we also have
all right, you want to come make a plate?
Kevin Young. And then also on Zoom, we have Nick Herbo and we have Doug Swales. So all 5 members are present. First order of business is approval of minutes, February 13th. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. Okay, public input. Is there anyone here from the public that'd like to speak to the council now? Okay. We'll go on to first order of business is Fire Chief Scott Lyon is here. And Chief's going to talk to us about what he does in University Heights.
That's right.
Thank you, Chief.
Well, no, thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me here tonight. It's definitely my pleasure to be here. We'll talk a little bit about where I come from and our service to the citizens here in University Heights. I've been in position almost 2 years now, came from Central Iowa. After spending 25 years over there, I decided to make the big jump over to Eastern Iowa. So it'll be 2 years next month. The Iowa City Fire Department, just as a review, is an all hazards fire department. Meaning that pretty much anything that comes down the road we can handle. It's a typical fire, rescue, medical, first response, kind of a core services. Outside of that, we have specialty teams that do hazardous materials response at the technician level, confined space, high angle rescue, low angle rescue, things involving water. So we're pretty well positioned that way. Last year, we had right around just over 10,000 unique apparatus responses for emergencies in our community. Roughly about 60% of those are medic runs. Every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all year long. We have 5 companies that are staffed. There are 3 engine companies, 2 aerial devices with big ladders on them, and 1 command unit. And they're dispersed throughout the city and also just right down the road from us here. From my understanding, it looks like we began our relationship in about 2016. Is when we started providing service to University Heights. From my perspective as the fire chief, I like to think it's working really well. From where I come from, this is actually very normal to have a neighboring city provide a level of fire protection for another neighbor. Since we've had this relationship, best I can tell, we've had 337 calls for service in University Heights from 2019 to 2023. Of those calls, we've had 5 fires, and that's total fires. So that could be anything from a dumpster, a non-structure fire. We've had 3 building fires here in University Heights. Medical calls, 137. Station 2 right down the street. They are first on scene to emergencies here in University Heights 95% of the time. And they respond at the 90th percentile. So 90% of the time, the citizens of University Heights can expect a fire truck to be on scene within 6 minutes and 56 seconds, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, year round. So I think we're really well positioned to continue to serve the community of University Heights. Obviously not a ton of calls. It looks like year by year, it kind of averages somewhere between high 40s to mid 80s for total call volume. And we are definitely able to perform those services for the community. It's been my pleasure to experience University Heights. It's definitely a unique enclave in the city. I began my fire service career at a place called Windsor Heights in central Iowa. So I'm very familiar with a city that's surrounded by other cities and some of those unique challenges that come with that. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions that y'all may have.
Any questions for Chief?
Why 6 minutes, 56 seconds?
Why? Well, so we have the turnout time piece, right? So when the buzzer goes off, first the call starts at the dispatch center. So there's a period of time in which the dispatchers go through and categorize the call, go ahead and alert the fire station. The firefighters assemble to the fire apparatus, and then they go on the call. So it could be, that's 24 hours a day. So if it's in the middle of the night, those types of things can lead to a little bit longer response. The 90th percentile component is very, very important. The Iowa City Fire Department is an accredited agency. And we've been accredited, we're going on, I believe, 15 years at this point. We're one of just a handful of organizations worldwide to be accredited that long. And many things lead into the accreditation model. But one of the key pieces is how you measure your performance. We don't measure anything we do at the Iowa City Fire Department on the average. The 50th percentile to our organization is not what we strive for. We're looking for 9 out of 10 times what can the customer experience. So our average, I'm sure, is probably half that number. But for the way that we operate and the way we choose to report data, we look at that 9 out of 10 times what can the community expect out of us. And one of the things I do want to state tonight before I take off is that, you know, I am your fire chief. So if questions arise, if we have a significant incident, we want to talk about it, that's absolutely something that I would expect to be asked about. So don't hesitate to call, reach out. I know I've had some conversations with members in this room regarding a variety of issues. But I am your fire chief and I'm here to serve. So.
And Troy Kelsey, Chief of Police, and I just want to hey, both the chief and his firefighters have been great whenever there's been a community event, whether it's we didn't do it but national and out, but recently some events that are here, read-alongs. He's always been great to either come personally or dedicate staff. The times that I need him, mostly for lift assists and things like that, they're always there promptly. So I generally appreciate the partnership and your firefighters.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it as well.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief, for coming.
You're welcome, and like I said, don't hesitate to reach out, and
we won't. Thank you.
See you all later. Have a good evening.
Yeah.
We'll go on to Mayor's report, and first we have consideration of 2407, and that's leaf vacuuming services, and this amount $19,875 is exactly what it was last budget, which is our current budget. And so is there a motion? Motion by Steph. Is there a second? Second by discussion. Okay, roll call vote.
Gahn.
Aye.
Herbold.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Swales.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Right now, as you know, they've scheduled the leaf vacuuming for spring, April 15th, but they're very accommodating if weather is bad or we need to change it. But right now it's scheduled for starting Monday, April 15th. Consideration of resolution 2410, and that's appointing Tim Schroeder as the city representatives for Think Iowa City and the Convention Visitors Bureau. When I made this appointment in January, it was overlooked that we needed to vote on it. So that's why it's on the agenda today. So is there a motion?
I'll motion.
Motion by Steph. Is there a second? Okay, that
More.
was
That was Lisa.
Lisa. Thank
Yes.
you, Lisa. Okay, discussion. Okay, ready for a roll call vote.
Herbold.
Aye.
Moore. Schroeder. You don't have to. No.
I'll abstain.
All right. Make my minutes harder. Okay. Swales.
Aye.
Gone.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0 with 1 abstention.
Thank you. So the last one I have is consideration of resolution 2412, and this is the parking regulations for the women's basketball tournament. And several people thought it would be a good idea that we let people park cars during that tournament if they need to. Is there a motion?
I'll also motion.
Motion by Steph. Is there a second?
I can second it.
Second by Doug. Discussion? Okay, we'll call vote.
Moore.
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Swales.
Aye.
Gone.
Aye.
Herbold. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. We'll go on to legal report, and Steve, you circulated a legal report, and we just put this under your name because it's
Sure.
the 2 resolutions.
Okay. Which?
So,
All right, so we've got Seats, this is the renewal of the Seats contract. Seats, Johnson County operates Seats paratransit services. The city's had a 2080 agreement with them for going on 30, I don't know how many years. And this is just the annual renewal. For a good amount of time, the city paid a flat amount. And then Seats said to us, you know, if you just did it per ride, you have so few rides, you would save money. And that's not always true, depending on our residents' needs, but it has been true for quite a while. So the current proposal is to extend or renew the Seats contract with Johnson County at a rate of $30 per ride, which is the same rate it was last year. So that is 2408. That would be before you.
okay, is there a motion for resolution 2408?
I'll moved.
That was Nick. And then is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Lisa. Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Swales.
Aye.
Gone.
Aye.
Herbold. Moore. Motion carries 5-0.
Both these go to the city of Iowa City and they vote on them and sign them too.
Right.
So the next one, Steve.
Yeah, the next one is the agreement with Iowa City, the city of Iowa City for transit services for bus service, so that the city bus, stops at the bus stops here in University Heights, and that amount is figured occasionally by population and usage, and then it's kind of set, and then it increases with the roughly cost of living. So the proposal for FY25 is $41,135.27, which I think I said in my report was about a 3.2% increase over the current year, which is this, I think, the consumer CPI. I was surprised it wasn't a little more than that, but anyway, in any event, it's basically just keeps pace with inflation.
I think it's 47,000.
What did I say? 37?
You said 41.
Excuse
I think 47.
47.
Yeah. Okay.
135.27. Thank you, Mike.
No.
So resolution number 2409 is before the council. Is there a motion?
Almost.
Motion by Tim. Is there a second?
Awesome.
Second by Lisa. Discussion? Okay, Mike, roll call vote, please.
Swales,
Aye.
Gahn,
Aye.
Herbold.
Aye.
Moore, Schroeder. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. We have the city clerk report that was sent around by Mike. Do you have any comments, Mike, or does anybody have any questions for Mike?
I don't think so. Like I say, we've started some web redesign things that probably be pretty low key. The legislation about short-term rentals, nothing's moved on that. And yeah, so I don't have anything else to add.
Thank you, Mike.
John's here via Zoom.
Yeah, we have, oh, there's John. Hi, John. We have the city treasurer report and John is present on Zoom and he sent around his report and the warrants. I think it was yesterday.
Yes.
Sent him around. But anyway, are there any additions to the list of warrants?
I don't have any additions unless Mike picked something up in the mail today.
I didn't see anything yet.
Okay.
Thanks,
Also
Mike.
didn't see anything, okay. Is there any objections to pay in the warrants? Hearing none, the warrants will be paid by unanimous consent. Are there any questions for John tonight? About his report? Busy time of year for you, John. Thanks for attending.
No, my pleasure. I literally had clients walk out of my office 5 minutes ago. I mean, like 10 minutes ago. So that's why I'm here and not there. Sorry.
Thank you. We'll go on to finance report and Nick, would you like to start and introduce how you want to present it?
Yeah, I think I would turn it over to Steve. Talked about him walking through the budget, and that works for you, Steve.
Okay, Steve.
Right. Well, let's see here. First, before we start that, just a quick reminder. Some dates here. Friday, March 15th, the public hearing notice for the tax levy meeting on April 2nd. It's scheduled to be published in the Citizen. And then also it needs to also be put on the city website, probably the earlier of the day if possible. I'm sure the Department of Management, because they know the date of the public hearing, sure sometime the 15th they're going to the city website. It would not surprise me. So
Pressure's on, Lisa.
Let's see. Then sometime around March 20th or a little after that, most of the counties are going to be sending out this truth and taxation statement. It'll be some kind of a postcard item that says what your tax levy rates of the city, school, county, and so forth are. April 2nd, we will have 2 very short special meetings. The first will be the public hearing for the tax levy, and then the second very short special meeting will be some public hearing for the budget approval and adoption on April 23rd. Yeah. So that's where we're at on the calendar. Okay, I'm going to the budget here. First of all, I really like to thank everybody for really working hard to get me information this year. It's, even though when you look at the budget, most of it seems about the same. This is definitely the most challenging year trying to put a budget together, dealing with some skyrocketing prices here and there. We've got a real squeeze on property tax revenue. And then also we're sometime in very short near future, the speed cameras, the option, where we're going to go on that, it's anybody's guess. I put some numbers into the budget to reflect that. probably my estimate would be different from yours, and I would look it off with a reasonable one that would work. But anyway, we'll start with that. So I'm going to go through the worksheet here. I'm not going to elaborate on every section here. Let's see. You'll notice these yellowish green boxes there. Those amounts are the budgetary compliance numbers. And when we look at the expenses, we have like public safety, there's a great big number, 780,000 or something like that. We can spend that whole 780 if we wanted to have fire, we could do that. Everybody else can do that. But anyway, that's where the budgetary compliance is. Everything within, you can spend it or use it however. Okay, property taxes, these are already based on the rates that we discussed at the last meeting. Overall, we have about $35,000 increase in property taxes altogether. Like I said, the general levy rate is getting squeezed and slightly pushed downward. The other levies are based on actual dollars estimated need. So we're looking at not quite $1.1 million property tax. Other city tax, hotel motel tax is a combined, that's $440,000. We've had 3 very strong quarterly receipts this year. At the end of December for the 2 payments, we already had like $240,000 in payment. I don't know what the payment was in February, but that would have covered October, November, December. Still had some football week and some basketball start. So I'm sure that was a real large number. So $440,000 at this point should be fairly easy to reach that point. So we may get more. That's more money in the pocket for projects and stuff. Tax increment financing, $703,000. That was based on the TIF request. It's cost November. Licenses and permits, not much change there. Interest income, I lowered that a little bit as we start on these street projects. Our cash balance is going to be going down, so we probably have that less interest income. Intergovernmental revenues. We go down to state shared revenues. Road use tax, that is estimated at $133 per capita by the Department of Transportation. Next item, commercial property and backfill. These are payments that we're backfilling the conversion of commercial to residential wherever they work at. So these monies originate through the state. So going on page 2, special assessments, that's the third line to the top, 77,000. We've always budgeted that based on part of the 2016 DOT bond was paid by those special assessments. And what we do every year is we budget the revenue based on principal and additional fees on that portion. So we may get more, we may get less. Okay, miscellaneous revenues. Most of them are generally about the same. The charges, the additional police charges, we don't budget that in the original budget. Partly because if we were going to put those wages in the budget, it would automatically calculate the payroll tax. Because the billing rate for those services includes payroll taxes, and we have to divvy that up somehow, so we're not billing others for the work and then also taking a tax levy and So that's why we just keep that out. We catch that at the budget at the end of the year. The item in the yellow up there, speed camera fines. What I used, this is very conservative. I figured if every other hour camera caught somebody, it'd be 12 tickets a day. The lowest ticket price is $105. Troy gave me information that generally 72% of those people that get the ticket pay it right again, or within a short reasonable period of time. What happens to the other 58%? I'm sure some never gets collected. Some of it trickle in later through the county. And then 35% fee with camera company fee. So even with at one ticket issued every other hour of the day, that revenue still comes up to about $215,000. I kept this at a conservative level here. Probably when we start off when they're operational, a lot of people aren't going to be expecting more. In time, people will adjust their bad driving habits or whatever. That 215 may still be right about. It's hard to tell. We're dealing with them here, so we go with that. Take it from there we go. See what we have. Maybe make some investments in the future years. What that is. Okay, and then jumping down to other financing sources that is there 615,250. That's based on capital projects listed in the first part of the expenses. That's not necessarily the amount that we would need to bond for. These projects listed, some could be paid with some motel tax money. There could be something else in the mix there. We do have some cash on hand yet. Specifically, there's a little over $20,000 left over out of the 2018 bond proceeds. And that's not included in that number because that's cash in hand. But I do have that expense. That's the very first thing listed there. With the notation that there's that money available. Going on to expenses here. First section, like I said, these are capital projects. Brian's provided all that information. And let's see on the agenda, he's got the spreadsheet that I used to put this together. I'll go over that a little bit too. Page 3, public safety. Crossing guard, no change expected there. Okay, starting on police, this is based on chief salary and then 4 full-time officers with a 3% cost of living and 3.5% cost of living increase. Also, we used an estimate for overtime, about 21,000. That's just overtime that's not billable to the university or the hospital or whoever. That's kind of a ballpark number each year. It can fluctuate up and down soon. And then we're expecting to have one officer that receives their health the in-new payment for the health insurance. It's estimated at about $15,500 based on the current single rate. And then also potentially could be looking at 10 to 15% next January. So we're looking at a budget amount for about $425,000. That's the base salaries of the police department. Next section, benefits, Social Security, Medicare, IPERS. These are all based on statutory rates. Health insurance, 62,200, based on 4 participants. With single coverage, and then estimating a possible 15% increase since January. Most of the rest of the police expenses are similar. There's some fluctuation here and there, but nothing real dramatic, except in the police car purchase, car lease item here is 77,600. This is on page 4, right in the middle, to about $125,000. Not surprisingly, cost of vehicles has gone through the roof for the last year. Probably kept even what that might be. Let's cover that. Like I said, most of the rest of the police expenses, supplies and so forth, pretty much about the same. On page 4, in shelter, that's the actual amount that we know, $254.94 a month next fiscal year. Fire department is 3.16% increase. It's on top page 5. $40,614. And then a hydrant flush, I also increased that amount this year by 3.16%. Hazmat is 75 cents cap cut. And then building inspection is at 3.25% pay increase. Okay, culture and recreation, the library. These are actual numbers provided by the city of Coralville, a little over 70,000. The next big part of this is the hotel motel tax. That's split into 2 halves. One half is mandatory to be spent on visitor and tourism attractions related activities to that, 220,000. Out of that, 220,000 would be the CDB membership fee, which is 25% of the total hotel and motel tax revenue. The other 50% remainder, that can also be used to fund the mandatory part, and also overflowing this part. Otherwise, indirect transportation things. Right now we are using that portion to pay portions of the portion of the 2018 the Fisher Park bond, and then fully for the 2022 paid and bond principal and interest. Community center and parks unchanged. Bottom page 5, community and economic development. The first 2 lines, that's the divided TIP revenue. 95% goes to the developer rebate. City retains 5% to use for future TIP projects. There's the CBD membership that gets moved out of culture and recreation into community and economic development. Tree trimming planning is $6,000. Going on to page 6, public works. This is predominantly the streets. It's been Ryan's provided all of that information except for the street lights and the traffic light electricity. Those 2 total about 7,800. It's a pretty stable number every year. A grand total about 200, just short of 225,000. In streets, transit, I have city bus service. That's same amount in resolution there. Seats, raised the same thing as the current year right now. But some years it's less than 5, and some nothing significant. Sanitation with is pretty much the same, almost exactly the same thing. I did separate out. There's a City of Iowa City charges $91.75 to process this billing. And then, as Louise mentioned, lead vacuuming is the same again this next year. Bottom of page 6, general government, first part, mayor, council salaries, same thing. Most of the expenses in this whole department are quite similar to the current year where we're looking at legal fees, publications. It also includes the technology expenses, website, so forth. Let's see. I think there's anything else that really stands out. On page 8, right at the last item, tort liability insurance. 30 estimated could be a possible 30% increase that was put out by this Iowa Community Insurance Pool put out an advisory letter in the last November or December. And property and liability insurance can be very well expected 30% increases next year. And then the last service is debt service. These are to pay the 5 city bonds. This comes directly off the amortization schedules plus the annual fee that the banks charge to process the payments. So when we get down to the net surplus here, on the right hand column for current year, we have a negative 10,500. Keep in mind that also includes the next line below that is 20,307. I took that out because that's the park bond money that's still available, so it's not going to be used in current operations. So if we weren't even add that in there, we'd be looking at about $9,800 surplus for the year. The information on the right is just a breakdown between the general fund, the road use tax fund, and the others, just to make sure that everything reconciled. So we're looking at potential $50,000 surplus in the general fund, which would be very welcome because the last couple of years with challenges we've had, the general fund is at a low level. Road use tax, that's a negative $46,800. That's if we do spend the whole $55,000 on other family replacements that may happen in Newmont. There's a rule or guideline that in governmental accounting in Iowa, funds really should not accumulate more than 1 year of expenditures in their funds. If you do, you have to have a plan to spend it. Right now, we've ever right at that point where we have a little bit of excess. So I just put some of these criminal projects in expense to spend some of that down, so you don't way over the amount that you should have in revenues. All other funds can have $2,300 surplus. And then the last page is just historical. This is the net after we roll back regular tax levy. It's the taxable. And you can see we've had some years in the past where our taxable revenue or taxable amount has increased between 5 and 10%. Actually, the last 6 years, it's generally been relatively low. 2 years there, 22 to 23, that's where the hotel team on tax bill at full value. So anyway, even though the last 2 years have been 3+%, because of the House File 718 legislation, we're not able to get a 3% increase in our property tax revenue, and that's really getting squeezed. And last month I referenced that on the public hearing notice, getting about 1.07% increase. So there are challenges, there are some unknowns, a lot of things are similar. So we do not need to make a formal decision on it tonight. Other than if everything looks good, I can go ahead and start on the rest of the online file. It's once we have the second meeting and set that date, then I'll have to get the budget file done and then generate that notice, which will be the final numbers. So at this point, if there's anything else that should be changed, please let us know so we can get this work in. One thing that we cannot change at this point, we can absolutely cannot change it upward, would be the property tax levy. There's always an option to go lower. Once the publication gets in the paper, approximately April 10th, it's going to have all these dollar amounts that we're going to spend. When we approve it April 23rd, we can't increase any function. We can decrease it, but it's changed a lot from year to year. We're pretty much set. So other than that, if anybody has any questions or concerns, comments.
Any questions for Nick or for Steve? I think you did a good job pulling it all together. As close as you can be. I think you used good sense in some of the things, not just guess things, actual figures, pretty much. Nick, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just thanks again to everybody who contributed and to Steve. I think the idea is that we'll move forward with this budget absent hearing any questions, concerns, comments after tonight, if that's my understanding of council's position.
Okay, so everyone has April 2nd on their calendar for the public hearing, and depends on public comment that we get, but the meeting should be fairly short. That night. Okay, thank you very much. Nick, would you like to proceed with your next business? Did you see that Virginia Hayes is here?
Yeah, I was hoping Virginia would come forward. My report contained my thoughts on this project. I really appreciate the work Virginia put into the bid and the description of the work that she'd be doing. And I got good feedback from a lot of residents and council members. So really would just be, I don't know, Virginia, if you want to say a few words about the work. I know one of the biggest issues is the timing. My understanding from talking to you, Virginia, was that this is something you need to get going on in March, or it would be next March because of how overgrown it becomes and how quickly that happens. So I would yield the floor to Virginia.
Okay. I'm open to any comments if counselors or staff think that there's any details that we have missed in here. I did think of one thing today, which is that we need to post some kind of signage saying that the trails are closed during the days that the work is being completed. We'll give you a range when the work is going to potentially take place, but because we're trying to pull a small chipper into the woods, we're going to only do it when the ground is pretty firm. So it's going to be better to pin it because we don't want to get stuff stuck back there. So we'll need to, put signage to close the trails when work is actually being performed and then pull them at the end. So I remember how this stuff used to go a little bit, like Steve would put some notes in there, whatever. So I don't know if there's any other comments along those lines that counselors wanted to discuss. The primary goals, like I said, are safety and then ecology. It's gotten pretty gnarly back there since I lived in town. It was already gnarly. So the idea is just to get a lot of that hanging broken stuff down. I think it is going to visually be a lot nicer to then ship as much of that debris as we can, keeping the organic matter on site. So that it's not quite so crazy looking right now. And it's a very high fuel load back in there. This is still a remnant of our oak hickory woodlands that we once had in Iowa. There are, most of the forest is pretty young back there, but there are tucked away some very big trees. That's a fire ecosystem. That's how that gets managed in nature. And so we want to keep on top of the fuel load a little bit. If we go ahead with this today, my report mentions that this red area I am suggesting an area for future work. I think you guys are all fairly well versed in invasive species management at this point, but basically don't start that area unless you're committed to a long-term plan for it. There's been a lot of trees that have come down in that red chunk, and it's very open to sunlight right now, and it's overrun with just all kinds of nonsense. But if you go in there one time, you're not going to make any headway. You need to be hitting that with like repeated efforts to knock back the invasive species at least once a year, possibly twice a year, and for at least 5 years. So be thinking about that for the future, that I would not take that chunk on unless you're ready to commit to a long-term plan for it.
When you say twice a year, what would be the other time of year?
Like late fall and early spring.
And then you bring a crew in from your business.
Yeah.
And okay.
And so it would
and this weather, isn't it kind of making things weird for you? I mean, we have winter, spring, summer, then spring.
Yeah, we can't take our snowplows off. Trying to do spring games.
Yeah, and then I heard it could snow at the end of this month. And so, yeah.
I don't know. And I was looking through pictures on my phone to find some pictures from last year, and I came across March 25th of last year, we got 3 inches of snow in the whole city. And I forgot about that completely. But okay. Any other, what questions do you guys have? I want to work with Jason McCartney on this project. He's a local guy who does a lot of work for the city of Porterville and establishing non-biking trails for them. And so he's pretty well accustomed to like the type of work that this would be, where we really are not trying to like ransack the place. We're going to be a little bit picky in what comes down. We're not trying to clear cut stuff, because I know that you're going to get a lot of bad comments if that is what happens.
I know you're so familiar with the property, and you're the perfect person because you lived close to the property before.
Yeah.
And you have the expertise and the education to do this. And I know very little about it. And I'm very excited that you can do this. Any other questions for Virginia?
Hey, this is Doug. I got a quick question. Kind of 2 questions. And you may have said something, Virginia. I apologize. I can't hear very well. Where's the closest fire hydrant to that area there where your proposed parking would be? What's the closest one? And then part 2 is, God forbid, what's the city's liability of, let's just say somebody walked in there and started a fire and it burnt the first couple houses down. Is it much liability for the city, or is that on the homeowner? Or I just got to ask that question. Could they come back on the city if somebody threw a cigarette there in the leaves and caught fire and burnt their house down? Would we be held liable for any damages?
That's city attorney.
Yeah, I this is because the city owns that property. If somebody starts a fire on it, I mean, I don't think there's any real risk of liability there. Or, we got insurance for such things anyway, but I have a hard time seeing, the city has a lot of, immunities. And even if it didn't, so in other words, there are circumstances where someone could bring a claim, file a lawsuit against a company or a person if that company or person did things, but they can't file those kinds of claims against the city. There's just a lot of protection that way, but I have a hard time seeing how somebody else's act starts that condition, unless the city's doing something to promote, fire. I don't see that as a problem.
There's a hydrant at the end of Gulfview.
It's right in front of Russ's.
Yeah, which is,
And I believe there's
right
one
here.
at Sunset also.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a hydrant right where I'm waving my mouse right now. This is Russ Boyer's house right here. And this is Gulfview. This is ours right here. But there's a hydrant right here. And then this is the end of Sunset Street right here, right before the walking trail. And there is another hydrant, I want to say at Camphy's, pretty close to there. So they're not tremendously close, but they're somewhat, there are two hydrants at either end.
Okay.
So.
And there isn't one on Prospect? I can't remember. I don't know. Maybe by
I can't picture one. I mean, I can't.
I just was.
As I walk through there, because I do walk through that a lot, actually. I don't, if it is, it's down near Humphreys or Philibert's. So, yeah.
Yeah, the website.
Okay, so it's the purple, green, and orange sections that are before you tonight. The red section, I kind of listed what I recommend for that area, but that is not a part of the work that would be considered for the spring.
Great.
So we have resolution number 2414. Would you like us to consider that, Nick?
Yes, so moved.
Okay, a motion by Nick. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Lisa. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Going around the horn tonight. Gunn. Herbold.
Aye.
Moore. Schroeder. Swales.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very, very much. And thank you, Nick, for taking the lead on this.
Thank you.
And Lisa Haverkamp will be a good resource. She's with the tree board, and I'm sure she's talked to you. And she's been very active in working on projects.
Well, and just to piggyback on what Virginia shared, I went to a.
You want to come up here? Thank you, Lisa.
Attended an invasive species workshop that Trees Forever put on in Marion. It's been 3
2
weeks
weeks
ago.
ago.
Yeah, and made a contact with the gentleman who's an arborist. Virginia knows him, which is a good thing, and said, we've got 11 acres. Would you be interested in doing a workshop here? So it would be a good thing to get publicity, in the city, get people to walk through. We'd have to make sure we weren't overlapping on the time that sustainable landscape is in there doing work, but would give people a chance to maybe tour the area and see, what do we mean by invasive species? What are we looking at, and what are we doing to kind of preserve that space? So it's exciting. So
does that mean you get volunteers too?
Yeah, it would just what they did in Marion. They just advertised it, and whoever wanted to show up, he had equipment that you could use, loppers and herbicide to be able to paint on the stems after you cut them off. So, and I tried it. I got rid of 5 barberries. They're gone. They are gone now. And I've looked at a couple of the grants. I know DNR has different grants available, but they've been derecho ones. And we really haven't assessed the Swisher track to see how much damage was done during the derecho. In there, I saw trees falling from our back windows, but we really don't know that we could apply for that, you know, and say that this was definitely derecho damage. So been holding
So you're
on
gonna
my
come up with
nose.
a date,
I-
possibly?
Yeah, I'm emailing with the Nick McGrath from Trees Are Forever.
Great,
So
thank
I'll
you.
let you
Thanks,
know,
Lisa.
and you're welcome.
The only thing I would add, and having heard about the invasive species work that was just explained, and also the possibility of a lot of wood chipping occurring, but occurring in certain areas, not everywhere. Both might be opportunities for residents to get involved. And so I'm hopeful that, you know, as those timelines start to become more solid, we can get out the word to residents who might want to be interested in either or both of the invasive species workshops and the spreading of wood chips along the path. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks again, Nick. And
Thank you,
thanks,
folks.
Virginia.
You know,
And
I love this parcel. Not a chance.
thank you. Excited.
Don't forget,
Oh.
hey, Virginia, don't forget your fence post puller.
So we'll go on to the chief report, the committee report. Stephanie, how would you like to start with the chief first?
I think the chief.
Okay, very good.
I would like to take the time and go through some items on my report. First of all, I thought perhaps the mayor mentioned this in her report. I didn't want to steal her thunder, but the OUP South HOA meeting, one of the items that I brought forward was the city of University Heights. It sounds like we'll have maybe 2 per diem parades coming up.
Yeah, we're gonna discuss it next month more, though, yes.
So there's a possibility of that, but OUP has approved us placing one here at that.
Thank you for
fruition.
checking with them.
Kevin Sanders, Iowa City NAACP, in coordination with February being Black History Month, and the fact that Iowa City, Johnson County, and University of Iowa Police Departments all have different chiefs or sheriffs than they did when we originally drafted and signed the Duty to Intercede memorandum back in 2020. Wanted to reaffirm that, so I put that together. Kevin and I put that together. That's an attachment. We signed that. There will be more on that. I'm meeting with Kevin tomorrow. We're going to kind of highlight some of the things that have happened since 2020 for the media. ATE update. Genoptic is currently in University Heights. I'm surprised, and perhaps some of you have received inquiries. Signs have, I believe, all been placed now. As far as the signs, I did not go down on George, but signs that indicate as you come into the community that there is traffic camera enforcement, and signs that indicate as you drive into the actual areas where the fixed hardware will be, that photo enforcement will be taking place. So those signs are in. The pole and power has been run over to Kozer. The meter is not yet in, and there's no hardware actually mounted on those poles. Paul, one of the Genoptic employees, came up from Oklahoma to oversee the subcontractors who are doing all that. I met with him yesterday, and I'm meeting with him again tomorrow. Along those lines, somebody either notified the Gazette or she was aware of it, but Emily Anderson, a reporter with the Gazette, contacted me. We had a long conversation yesterday. We had another long conversation today. I provided her with some information. I'm not sure when that story will run, but I believe, if I had to guess, it will be tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to seeing that story and the publicity that it gets. I said to her repeatedly that that's part of what we want to do is generate information and generate knowledge, public knowledge, that we are going to be using that system, and people only ask us if they slow down for 6 blocks. Snowstorm blizzard, I just wanted to touch on that. I did mention at a last meeting, yet there was some confusion. Mark Phelps had said that the governor had made her disaster proclamation that day, or I'm sorry, that FEMA had made their disaster proclamation. That's not true. That day, the governor requested that a presidential major disaster proclamation be made, and there has not yet been a decision on that. Although at the mayor's direction, I did complete our preliminary damage assessment, which is just preliminary, but that's completed and submitted to our EMA for consideration. I'm going to skip down over budget items for just a moment to H. I always like to highlight when our officers participate in events like this, but Officer Chris Akers represented University Heights in a Project Fun event, and you can read about that there, but he did a good job with it. I got very positive feedback from the Johnson County Attorney's Office, the person who coordinated that, and Chris said he had fun doing it too, and it's just nice to be able to have both the opportunity and then the ability, because of the community we live in, for officers to take part of those things. Jumping back up to budget items, I'll touch on first the legacy patrol vehicle, the 2013 Ford Explorer, which was the last of the vehicles, and it's been sitting out here since 2019. We tried to sell it 2 times before. Each time the bid got the offer was a little bit higher. Nick prompted me to try again, and it was something that was on my list. And we were able to finally close that sale, and actually that was the highest that we were offered in the 4 years that it's been sitting out there. So it's good to see that go, and what little bit of money we got come back into the general fund for that. And then finally, the fleet and equipment lease. Steve Poole touched on that. Just as a reminder, back in 2018, Nate Peterson and Nick was the community protection chair at the time, a member of council and community protection chair at the time. And kind of under each of their oversight and work, they worked with Ryan Serber he worked with Keltec at the time. And as a result of that, we ended up with a lease, a 4-year lease of our entire fleet and all of the electronics and stuff that's in the cars. It's not just the vehicles, it's all of the electronics, it's all of the mounting hardware to hold the electronics where they need to be. That enabled us to have a fixed cost. It enabled us to upgrade instead of having really stuff that was, some of it was old, some of it was new, it was cobbled together. Whenever there was an issue, an installer was pointing at a company who was pointing at a manufacturer. I mean, it was hard to maintain the equipment. Plus there was a cost to constantly maintain it. The lease program allowed us to fix our costs. They were known for 4 years, and to have new equipment and service throughout that contract to cut down on our fleet maintenance costs, which have come down 50% in the last 4 years. The end of last year, we negotiated a 1-year extension on that lease, but we are now, it's running out. It's going to be up at the end of June, and we need to decide how to move forward. A lease isn't, one way or another, you're paying for the vehicles and the equipment and the use of the vehicles. Some people like to lease vehicles, some people don't. From my standpoint, from my position as a department head, there are some definite benefits to it. I know how to budget every year. My costs are fixed. I have some very small maintenance items, such as windshield wipers, or if an officer inadvertently opens the door up into a passing vehicle and we have to pay a $350 deductible on our insurance. But everything else is fixed. The vehicles are renewed. Our vehicles are not in bad shape right now, but we're out of warranty, and we pay for everything from routine maintenance items, routine wear and tear items like new tires, to if a transmission went out or a water cooler went out. Our electronics in the vehicles are end of life or near end of life. They're all at least 5 years old, and some of the equipment, the radar units and the computers, actually we moved over into those vehicles, so they are just beyond 5 years, or in the case of the radar, significantly older. The body cameras, which I think are hugely important for any agency, officers need to be wearing those. Officers need to be reporting their interactions on calls for service, and when they interact with community members. That's not just a good idea anymore. That's accepted best practice. And if you're not doing it and there's an issue, you are going to end up being sued for it, and you're not going to have the video and audio evidence that is frankly expected now by the courts that you're able to present that. Our cameras are end of life. They're no longer supported. And it's an integrated system. So it's both our in-car cameras and our body cameras that all ties into the same system. We have 8-bay storage that we have stored all of those interactions for the last 5 years. But that's just one example of, it's not just it'd be nice to replace the electronics need to be replaced. The vehicles, I would like to replace them. I think that the lease, for the same reason that it made good sense 5 years ago, I think that it makes good sense now. But what has changed over those 5 years, though, is there's no longer a police sedan that is offered. You have to go with an SUV or a pickup. SUV prices are roughly $7,000 more than a sedan price would be. The inflation of vehicles, the compounded inflation of vehicles is roughly 75%. Then you have to add the additional 7,000. So from 5 years ago to now, if you were to buy that same sedan, it would, or Durango is what we're looking at. That same Durango now is roughly 75% more expensive than it was 5 years ago. Plus, we're having to pay a $7,000 boost just because we didn't have the sedan, the Durango before. The electronics and the mounting hardware, it's hard to nail that down because depending on which piece you're looking at, it might be a 40% increase or it might be a 150% increase in the electronics and the mounting hardware. Wage costs and financing costs, while those don't impact us directly if we were to purchase, they do figure in a lease agreement because the company that is providing the equipment and providing the manpower, their costs have also gone up. Their wage costs have gone up over the last 5 years. There are very crude numbers, but I sat down with Ryan and we went through this in detail, and Ryan compiled numbers for me. But they've increased 40 to 50%. Financing costs, again, we're not borrowing the money to purchase them, but one of the advantages of the lease is we're not paying for a new fleet and all the new equipment that goes in it and all the new hardware in one lump sum. We're spreading that cost out over 5 years is what we've looked at as far as a lease term. And because of that, especially on the front half of the lease and through much of the lease, it's the company, it's the vendor sector in this case that is either having to borrow. I mean, they're having to finance all of that up front. We're paying them back over time. So even though financing costs, it's not us that's going out and getting the loan or what are we doing with the money. That's money that they can either invest elsewhere or that they have to carry on their books because they borrow this to invest looking long term. I have 9 pages of a very, very detailed breakdown that I would be glad to go through, but I don't think that we need to. I mean, in a nutshell, our vehicle repair costs have dropped 50% over the last 5 years. And that's in large part because we had new equipment that was under warranty, that one company is covering everything from where the rubber hits the wheels to the antennas pointed up in the sky. And if it's not a routine maintenance item, they're taking care of it. And nobody's pointing fingers and saying, you know, the installer did it wrong, or this is an issue with the electronics company, or this is a vehicle issue. And you've got one person to deal with. The agreement that we've had with Keltec has been fantastic. Keltec did not submit a proposal for me. I had a conversation with them in early winter. I've had follow-up conversations with them as late as mid-February, and I don't know for sure why that is. I don't feel like I need to go beg them for a proposal. I suspect that it's one of a couple of factors, and that is vehicle availability. It's still very difficult to find lease bids. The vehicles that Sector has identified for us, I can't remember whether it's Tennessee or Kentucky, but they're going that far to get them. That's where they need to go to find them so that they can have them here and have new equipment installed by July 1. I don't know whether Keltec can't find vehicles or ownership of Keltec has also changed in the 5 years since Nate and Nick worked with them. and the husband and wife that owned it have sold it. And it does not appear to me that the focus of their business is now fleet equipment lease so much as other aspects of the electronics. So Sector stepped forward. Sector did submit a proposal. While initially it looked very good, when we sat down and went through it and looked at the numbers, it was higher than I felt comfortable bringing to council. Last Friday, we spent a significant amount of the day of the morning going through it and managed to take $30,000 plus or minus 1,000 off of their proposal to get it down to the 124 and change. Our lease amount for the last 5 years has been just under 78,000, roughly 77 and change. When I go back and we look at actual costs on fleet, we've spent roughly 84,000 a year. So it's a 60% increase in our lease payment, or it's a 40% increase in what our vehicle costs have been. We lock into that amount for the next 5 years and are protected, if you will, from inflation over the next 5 years until we have to negotiate again. I still like the fixed cost. I still like the fact that we're getting brand new equipment. If we bought out the vehicles that we have, it would cost roughly $100,000 for the vehicles. Plus there's a $2,000 transaction fee on each vehicle. So roughly $106,000 to buy them out. The electronics in them do need to be replaced, and whether we would do that wholesale or piecemeal, I did some research and I consulted with Iowa City, who I have a good relationship with. And my best guess is it would cost $30,000 approximately per vehicle to replace the end of life electronics. That's not top lights. That's the stuff that the officers depend on, the computers, the routers, the body cameras and in-car cameras. So that's the electronics. All of the electronic package is even more than that. And then there's the hardware to mount it. But you're still ending up with a vehicle that we're going to continue to incur maintenance costs that we won't know from year to year. Is this a good year that we're not having to put anything except new tires on vehicles? Or is this a year that a vehicle needs to be replaced, or 2 vehicles need to be replaced? And University Heights is back into the same cycle that they were prior to this arrangement that Nick and Ryan and Nate worked through back in 2018 and included in 2019. And I should actually, I know Lisa was on the council then, and the mayor was the mayor then, so they're probably familiar with a lot of this discussion. To me, it was a little bit of sticker shock to see that increase, and I can go through what we're getting. We are switching to Dodges if you decide to go with Sector. One, it's the vehicles that are, one, it's that we're staying with Dodges. One, it's the vehicles that are currently available, but they are also the least expensive from an investment standpoint of the other major manufacturers that provide police vehicles. Wait a minute. Yes, that provide police vehicles. So you have Chevy and you have Ford and you have Dodge. Chevy's and Ford's price point for their fleet is more than that. We will outfit them with all the emergency equipment that's necessary to operate them, but we did pare down some of the Christmas tree lights and things like that. We tried to put on what is necessary for our environment. We no longer work grant enforcement out on the interstate that we need to light them up like trooper cars. They need to be seen here. They need to be seen when they're covering accidents, but they don't need push bumpers on them to push people out of the roadway and into the median. Upgrade on all the electronics. One of the things that I particularly liked is the arrangements that are in place. If you choose to agree with this contract, that our camera system will, like all the other electronics, have maintenance and be serviceable throughout. But if we're 2 generations behind on cameras now, we're into life. If that is occurring again, then mid-cycle, at no additional cost, if we get into that, if we're behind in technology, we can upgrade to another camera system, whatever the new camera system is. So it future-proofs it, if you will. It makes it so that we don't end up in the same boat where at the end of 5 years, we're trying to maintain a system that's no longer supported. We would also move our storage to a cloud-based system. One of the shortcomings that I hope to see the city be able to address sometime in the near future, I mean, the next few years, is our infrastructure. City clerk has his workstation, the police department has their workstations, but there's no backup. There's no robust backup. And if something happened, I mean, we're a bad power outage away from losing everything electronically. I want to move our video evidence, because that's what it is, to the cloud, and that's part of what this camera system will do. But I also think that, and I talked with some of you about this, I also think that as we move forward and some of the things Steve talked about as far as question marks on revenue that will be generated, I think that I'm hoping between hotel motel and as we come off the TIF here in the years to come, and if the ATE, if the traffic camera system doesn't succeed in slowing 100% of the people down, and there's some small percentage of people that continue to speed and pay the tickets, then that money can be reinvested in some of that infrastructure where there's a weak link right now. But because of that, that was one of the reasons the cloud-based system seemed so good to me. And I can go through, I have 5 pages worth of stuff. It's a new company. It's not Keltec that Nick and Nate worked with 5 years ago, but it's the same people that Nick and Nate worked with 5 years ago. Back on November 18th, 2018, it was Ryan and Chief Peterson who then presented the Keltec proposal to council, and now Ryan is with Sector. The person that I work most closely with in the field, his first name is Brandon. He is also moved over to Sector. And again, it's part of that. Sector has gone a different direction. They're not necessarily, at least from their employees' view, they're not necessarily the same company that they used to be. Sector does equipment and installs for University of Iowa, for Johnson County Sheriff's Office. They're working with, I think it's probably too strong to say they have proposals out, but they're working with other entities in the county also toward coming to agreements with them. So while Sector is a new name, they're not new to the industry, and the people that we'd be working with are the same people that we work with through much of this particular contract. I can go on and on. I have 9 pages of material, but does anybody have any specific
let's see if they have questions
like me to address or concerns? Nick, could you hear that? Doug, could you hear that?
Yes.
Okay, I forget that I'm not talking to you in the room, and I wasn't sure I was projecting.
I'd like to make a comment. Troy, you're spot on. We're in the same process right now at the University of Iowa. We're moving everything over to the cloud as much as possible, solely for the cost savings of licensing and software licensing agreements that, you know, for just each piece of equipment might be $25,000 just for the software. So we're finding out it's cheaper to put everything on the cloud and then save that $25,000. I mean, we'll still have a licensing agreement that, you know, that's how they pepper you with $5,000 a year or 2 years or 5 years. But a lot of times it's just cheaper to jump to the cloud or, you know, virtual server. But then also you're getting away from maintaining old equipment. So if you got to spend $25,000 on software licensing, you're better off just buying new equipment that has the licensing agreement for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It comes with the new equipment. So you're actually money ahead. So you're spot on.
And you're right about the licensing and say the subscription fees, if you will, but they are part of the lease. That's all built into the lease equipment, or I'm sorry, the vehicle equipment lease. It does upgrade our technology, and even on the camera system, it allows us to more easily do redaction, to share files with. Most of the time it's the county attorney's office, but if we needed to share something with Steve or Abby or the city attorney's office, it just makes it easier for us to do that and to redact so that personal conversation, for example, isn't there if it doesn't need to be, or faces aren't there. I mean, we're 5 years behind that, and our system is end of life right now.
And what's
Wow.
nice too is that other folks can chime in if you have any kind of like a dashboard or making an application to where, like, if the mayor needed to pull up a report or look into it, it's easier to access, you know, with any kind of dual authentication. Yeah, I think you're right on the money going this route.
I had sticker shock when we first went over the numbers. I did. I mean, that is a huge increase, but we have not had any increase other than wear and tear items. We've had not any additional vehicle fleet costs for 5 years now. And now we're catching up with inflation, and we're actually projecting a little bit into the future. But I think for the peace of mind, for the reliability, and for the service, and having it be one company that I'm dealing with rather than a bunch of, it makes sense. It makes it easier for me to, or my replacement, and we'll talk about that, but it makes it easier for the police department to administer it and maintain the equipment. It makes it easier for a department head to anticipate costs for Steve Cool. That was one of the reasons that this year's budget was much more difficult for me. It wasn't just what's going to happen with the ATE. Our fleet costs have basically not changed for 5 years. And this year I'm trying to figure out what's going to happen next year. So I like it. Again, you're not buying something for a few pennies that would cost anybody else $1. You're just paying for it in a different way, but I still think it presents a value for your money. I like what you receive for it.
Chief, the only question I had was, I know was a lot of discussion after we did this initially about the number of vehicles that we've had. Can you just briefly speak on that issue?
Yes, I told them, as far as this year, I told them what it was that I wanted to try to maintain the same fleet that we had. Most days, we need probably at most 2 vehicles. During football season, there are times when we use all of these vehicles. And more importantly, some of the perks that the city, that the elected officials have allowed me to offer officers to make University Heights attractive in a different way, since we can't quite compete with salary, is that if you live in the county, you can take your vehicle home if you want to, and you're on duty when you get in it, you're off duty when you get out of it. It increases response time, whether that's because somebody's on vacation or it's because, Officer Jasmine is working by himself late nights and something's happening at the courtyard, and while Iowa City is great to back and we need a second officer here, and whoever's responding doesn't have to get in their own personal vehicle, try to be somewhat aware of traffic laws while they get to the police department, and then get into another vehicle that, depending on the time of year, they might have to start and scrape us. I mean, it's just, it is a benefit to the officers. It is a benefit to the community. And then there's a per unit price break. I don't know specifically on this particular contract, Nick, because I didn't break that out that way, but I know when we looked at the original contract, when Nate went over it with me, while there was originally discussion of just getting 4 vehicles, the unit rate by jumping up to 5 vehicles, while there was a little bit more that was paid overall, there was less paid per unit because it was economy of scale. So those were some of the things that we looked at. Those are some of the things where I'd like to try to maintain this. I don't see the department getting any smaller. You and I have had a very recent discussion about how we might park vehicles that stay here. All of those things could change the equation moving forward. Our police vehicles get more wear and tear on them by officers getting in and out of them, and officers idling them while they're working, so that they're not going out to a car that's iced over, or they're not going out to a car that sat there, that the temperature has reached a point or the time has reached a point, the electronics have shut off. And now they're going to that emergency call and they're not able to call up the notes because they need to log back on, or they just need to drive there blindly. Right now, that's the reality, is we do have to leave them outside. That could all change, and if we didn't have to idle them and put that wear and tear on them, put those miles on them, and you know, that it might be that we could say, you know what, we can get by with one less vehicle. Honestly, I'm glad to have Sergeant Tucker. I'm glad to have, you know, RJ. I wish they both lived in the county, and in a perfect world, we would have everybody live in the county and in or near University Heights, in which case every one of those vehicles should be going home with an officer. That's a perk. That's how we get those officers, in which case we would need 5 vehicles. So it's a balance point. It's a tipping point. Do we need 5 vehicles? Most of the time we don't, but there are times that we do. And if it fits in the budget, there's been at least 2 times in the last 18 months that I can think of that we've had a patrol car out because somebody backed into it, and another time an officer opened the door into a passing vehicle. I mean, if you don't have extra vehicles, you can't do that. So those are some of the considerations that go into the decision to make it 5 vehicles. And you might even be able to speak to that better than, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the screen because that's where I see you. You might even be able to speak to that better than me, because you and Nate were involved in that decision where I inherited it. And when I asked about it, Nate explained how it came to be.
It sounds like kind of the same trade-offs as last time. So I was just curious what your opinion was for this time. Thank you.
Right.
Do we have an estimated time for the ATE to be online, go live?
We do not. They are here installing right now. I could have given a little bit more update on that, I guess. The hiccup at the current moment, Paul drove in from Oklahoma. The hiccup at the current moment is, while they have the pole up on Poser and they have the power run to where the meter is installed, that needs to be hooked up. But the one on Melrose, first, Mid-America was going to allow us to use their, or might going to allow us to use their poles, and then they decided that no, they weren't. And then something, so Genoptic was going to put in a pole, then something changed, and Mid-Am said, you know, you can use the pole, and here's the contract. There really wasn't a hurry to finish that because the city engineer and Genoptics was submitting their proposal, and Ryan was making comments, and there was that going back and forth. But the day that finished, like the next work day, they were in and starting to do sign work and installs. We sent in, the mayor signed the contracts for me. Steve did his review. The mayor signed the contracts for me, and I forwarded them to Genoptic for them to fill in the information they needed to and to pay their fee. They sent those to Mid-Am. We said, thank you. And then in short order said, whoa, wait a minute. That's not the right contract, and we'll get you the right one. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on. Doug, I would think if it was just a matter of it being a wrong contract, that it's easy to send off a new PDF file and say, sign here. That hasn't happened. When I talked to Paul last night, I talked to him yesterday morning, the Genoptic person from the engineer from, I believe he's an engineer from Texas. Met with him yesterday morning. I met with him yesterday evening. And if there's no movement from Mid-Am, Genoptic will then do what they need to do with Ryan and just put up their own pole on Melrose. They certainly don't mind doing that. Once it's up, it should go live fairly quickly. I don't know that Steve Cool is aware of this, but once it does go live, while there will be, I suspect, a fairly high number of violators that don't know it, as you know, and we discussed before, we will do a warning period for 30 days, and those people who are 11 or over, if that's what we said, or that's what we are setting the threshold, then they will get warning notices, and the hope is that that will lower it. So even if we were to go live by the end of this month, which I'm hopeful for, we would still be 30 days of of warnings before we actually, and we can start those warnings, but we also need to be trained, the police department does, on how to do our piece of the ticket review and approval. So we're still 2 weeks plus away from the end of the month. I would hope, when I talk to Paul, he says he's not leaving Iowa until the install is complete, and he's from Oklahoma.
So Chief, I mean, I know the beginning of last week, you've done an amazing amount of work between last Monday when the police committee met.
Right.
And, you know, and you're juggling all these things. I'm amazed at what you got done. Both things. And so you have an agreement.
Correct. I asked.
With Sector.
Correct. I asked Sector, I spoke with City Attorney Ballard last week and said, would you prefer to have an amp? He said, yes, he would, so that we could, if council chooses to move forward with it, could do that tonight. They sent an agreement after we renegotiated or reworked everything. I received it at like 12:30 a.m. Monday morning, early Monday morning, and I think I forwarded it to Steve then Monday morning. He did his review. We had a little bit of conversation on it today. The proposal that's there, I wanted to speak to two issues on it. On page 9, where it outlines costs, and this is in their contract that I believe Steve forwarded, but it's part of it. It shows the fixed annual cost of $124,855, and under that it shows the cost of $120,000 to $130,000. The fixed annual cost is what we believe the cost will be. It'll be that $124,855, depending on our timing and when they lock in, and what interest rate is today or tomorrow, or what it could vary between that 120 and that 130. But their expectations, when we sat down and figured it, were $124,855, and that then includes everything. And you can see that includes some basic vehicle maintenance, oil change, transmission flush. There is some supply costs and a very minimal hourly fee on that. It does cover our maintenance. I mean, you can see what that includes as far as scope. The other thing that I wanted to point out on the page before, on page 8, as I mentioned, our current contract with Keltec ends at the end of June, so June 30th. Sector's plan, and they put it right there on page 8. There's their project timeline. They are, where does it say? June and July, Sector will deliver completed project to client at their office in University Heights. The target date, if we move forward, is June 24th, I believe. That's a Monday. That's their target date. They are actually, if they move forward, hoping in conversation to have it done even a week before then, so they can get it up here, and we're not doing the Keltec's in with their people wanting their cars, and you know, we've got transport people or transport vehicles trying to swap in the lot at 12:01 a.m. July 1st. So those were really the only things in the agreement that I wanted to highlight. There's a lot of legalese, which is why I went to Steve, but when Steve and I went over today, he said most of it is language that we recognize that is just standard lease agreement language.
You want to comment, Steve?
Not much, just,
Okay.
well, just what Troy said is right. There's nothing wrong with the terms, as long as the council understands the general proposal and particularly the price, but no, the terms of the contract are fine.
We do have options. Like I said, if this is not agreeable to council, or it just really rubs them wrong, then I'll cobble together. I mean, we'll buy out our existing fleet, and I'll cobble together some electronics, and we'll get through it. This program with Keltec was worked out by people, not me, who I think did a fine job with it, and it has been fantastic for the police department, and by extension for the city in the last 5 years. It's made it easy for me to work with Steve. It's made it easy for me to get repairs. It's just everything is. You're paying for a product, you're paying for service, and I think you've got your money's worth.
Okay, any other questions by council?
Can I make a motion?
Yes, because consideration resolution 2411 is for the council.
I'd like to motion.
Okay, motion by Steph. Is there a second? Second by Tim. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Herbold.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Swales.
Aye.
Gone.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
The last thing on my report that I will defer to Steph, if she's going to touch on it, is the staff condition.
Yeah, well, we've got the chief's extension for his contract. We'd like to bring up as another resolution to extend his contract just until June 30th, and that's gonna help us out with hiring a new police chief, getting the committee, interviewing candidates and getting all that in place. And also he'll be on hand to kind of help the next one out and answer questions and move the process forward of transitioning that next chief into the position. So I'd like to motion again for another resolution 2413 to extend the chief's employment contract through June 30th.
Okay, motion by Steph. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Lisa. Discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Moore.
Aye.
Schroeder. Swales.
Aye.
Gone.
Aye.
Herbold.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
I will address that a little bit more as we get near my contract end. I'm not leaving because I'm not happy here. I'm not extending because I'm not happy here. You all have been fantastic. I'm here in large part primarily because of the mayor. She and I had some long discussions 5 years ago. Nick was also on that council, as was Lisa. It's time to do something not full time for me. My wife is retiring and the end of June, and while I have fantastic officers and they make it easy for me to be gone, and you guys are also very generous to me and with me, it's just I feel like I should be here if I'm a full-time employee, and even police chiefing is usually not just 40 hours a week. So anyway, I just want to assure you all, it's not that I'm not happy here or that you're not taking care of me or the community's not taking care of me. I feel extremely grateful to work in this community. It is vastly different than where I started my career. So I'll talk more about that later, but I just wanted to assure you that it's not because of some unhappiness or displeasure. It's quite the opposite. It was a very, very difficult decision to make. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Mayor, I apologize. I need to sign off. But I say I'm looking at the rest of the agenda and I don't think anything is imperative that I'm sitting in on unless you see something.
I think it's fine. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate it. All right, thank you.
Sweet. Thank you so much. Okay, now, let's see. We have.
You're gonna need.
We have a motion in a second. Oh, and then he explained.
Well, for hiring.
No.
We want to consider.
You want it?
No, we did that, right?
No, there's another
We didn't
motion.
vote?
We need to make, we voted on extending the chief's contract. I think what Steph is asking to do is to make just a simple motion about authorizing the mayor to post notice.
Yes. To hire a new police chief.
Oh, I thought we were gonna talk about that a little bit. Okay, so did you make a motion?
No, not yet. I will make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I would like to make a motion that we post to hire a new police chief.
I'll second it.
Okay. And that's second by Doug.
Correct.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Johnny,
Okay, I heard 4 ayes, right?
Yep.
Thank you.
0-1
Um,
absent.
Now, we were talking about appointing a committee and I wondered if there was, I mean, and now Nick's left, but I want to get some volunteers. So, contact me if you want to serve, if, you know, we need one other council member to serve on the committee. And I don't want to decide right now because Nick's not here. And so we'll give him an opportunity too. So when, you know, like next week, by
Sure.
next week.
Sure.
Okay.
Then everybody's back in town, by next week.
Can I go on?
Yes, please.
There was another another thing I wanted to discuss. In discussing Troy's retirement and him leaving, we've discovered that over the past 5 years, he has taken on quite the role in the state of our city. He's, you know, not only run the department of our police, being the chief of police, but he also does things like sitting on the board of OUP. He does things for FEMA. He's done a lot of administrative tasks and duties that have fallen into his lap, have been assigned to him, and that he has taken on with, you know, no problems and has done a fabulous job. Many of these duties, a city administrator might perform in other cities. Back in February and March of 2017, it was visited that we had the possibility of hiring a city administrator, either full-time or part-time. And there was a lot of discussion and thought. And I think that mainly due to lack of funding, we didn't move forward with hiring anybody at that time. And over the years, a lot of those tasks and duties were divided up. And a lot of them landed heavily on our busy attorney shoulders, on our dedicated mayor's shoulders. And other city staff like Mike has taken on a lot of things. And again, our chief of police has stepped up and done a lot of these administrative tasks and duties. And I would think that with the OUP TIF, with the hotel motel tax, I know we don't have it on paper yet, but coming into the ATE, maybe revenue that we might be seeing if we don't stop everybody. It just seems natural that this might be the time and place to discuss the hiring of a city administration position. And I'm thinking about starting it out as just a part-time position starting out, not a full-time. I think that we have the perfect person to fill this position, but I think it's also something that maybe Steve would like to touch on. I don't know if we need to post it to the public and what protocols we got to follow, or.
Yeah, so the procedure is just that the city is required to post a 10-day application notice. So the city does need to make that posting, and what the city does after that is just up to the council in terms of who it interviews, whether it has interviews, who it hires. So that's all that's required.
Yeah. Does anybody have any discussion on the city administration role or the city administrator position?
I think our city is growing. I think it would be a wise move. I think we're ready for it now.
I think so too. Well, your committee will keep working on it.
Yeah.
And moving forward and.
Sure.
Okay, very good. Did you have a question, Lisa? You're.
Where does the city administrative position fall in the hierarchy? Because I don't.
From a hierarchy standpoint, the council, the mayor is the chief executive of the city. The council is the body that makes all of the, decisions for the city. So the city administrator would report directly to the council. On days when there's not a council meeting, the administrator would report to the mayor. The council would have liberty, freedom to organize things the way that it wants. So what I'm going to say is not, carved in stone, but I think typically the city administrator reports to the council, and then under the city administrator is kind of all the city staff, chief of police, city attorney, building official, all of those people would sort of, I think, report to the city administrator. Maybe not formally in terms of, employment decisions and those kinds of things, but certainly in terms of coordinating what's going on with the city, what needs to happen, where do we need to be focusing attention, or what are we doing well, what aren't we doing well, all of that sort of thing. And then to sort of be able to bring that to the council in a city administrator report, not necessarily just at council meetings, but periodically to say, hey, you've got somebody who's really employed to be overseeing everything as a whole for the city. So I hope that answers your question. And if it doesn't, I'll try again. But from a hierarchy standpoint, certainly the city administrator will report to the council.
Is there any other questions? Thank you, Stephanie, for taking the lead on this. You're doing a great job. Thank you. I see Pete Damiano here, and I kind of, and it's like 8:45, and we have the engineer report, but I think we ought to go to building, zoning, and sanitation and get an update from our zoning chair, our zoning commission chair, Pete Damiano. Thank you for attending, Pete.
Yeah, you bet. You mind if I join you?
Yeah,
Sure. Have a seat.
Welcome, Pete.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. For those that I'm not familiar with, my name is Pete Damiano. We live over on Grand Avenue. And about 3 years ago, the mayor had asked me to be on the zoning commission. We did not meet for about 2 years. And then last January, we were contacted by our city attorney and said there were some issues that the city council at the time had asked the zoning commission to begin to meet about. And so we've been meeting for the past year plus a little bit, and just wanted to bring a little report back to you and about some things that are going to be going on. And first, really want to thank the other members of the zoning commission, Alice Haugen, Mary Panther, Jay, I'm not sure I spelled
Speckine.
It is Speckine, okay, and Pat Yagi. And so we've had a lot of good discussions, and some of you have been involved with a number of this meeting, including the mayor and Steve and Mike. And when we were first approached with the issues from the city council at the time, there were a number of issues that we were asked to take a look at relating to, just to go through these very quickly. There were some Board of Adjustment questions. There were some things related to tailgating and allowable structures, or something relating to concerns about garages. And some of these, we've been in this area for 33 years. Some of you have been here even longer. You'll know that some of these issues have swung back and forth over the decades in terms of where people were at. And as a result of the last year of discussion, we've come to a place where we want to start to have some public discussions and try to bring
Again, we're advisory to the city council. We're not policy making. We're not trying to be policy making. But we really want to do is just try to help inform on these issues that were originally brought to us. So one of them were on that garage issues, and after our discussions really come back to the whole issues, if you're familiar with the concept of ADUs, or accessory dwelling units, which is basically can be a garage, can be a component within the home, can be related to where someone lives or not, what they used to call mother-in-law's units or some things like that. We've had some people that have had some questions, can I do this or not? And it hasn't really been vetted for quite a while. So we thought this is something that we'd want to think about vetting. There was an issue about parking, and some of these things, as you can imagine, came because of the 7 days a year with game day kinds of issues. But some of these are, ones that then spill over into the rest of the year. And it really is some of the issues we were talking about came down to, are we trying to zone things to prevent, or should we be looking at enforcing? So is it the activity, in other words, that we're trying to prevent by zoning, or is it actual zoning issue? And so Terry Garrett has been a part of that. Brian has been a part of this. We've had Chief Kelsey come in and talk about sort of like on the game day enforcement, where there have been some issues with one of the persons here that wanted to have a garage and wanted to have a porch. And, is that the issue, or is it what somebody's going to do with it? And so we really came to, it's really what somebody's going to do with it is where we came to. And so then what does that mean for some of the zoning ordinances and Ordinance 79 and some of these things? Some of you are probably more familiar than I am. We've been looking at them longer. And the chief said, yes, we can handle the enforcement. So what does that then mean when we're starting to look at some of the zoning? We have the Board of Adjustment, obviously, when somebody wants to look at something that's outside of the current zoning ordinances, but are there any other things that we might want to collectively think about adjusting? The parking came up because of, again, one of the other big issues we have are rentals. And so there were concerns about, somebody paving the entire front yard so they could have more rental space and more parking. Then that started interfering with somebody who wanted to put a patio in their backyard because it had to do with the proportion of land that's paved or this or that. And then it's like, is that really what we want to do or not? And it might be, but we thought this might be something that we'd wanted to get some public input and be able to bring that back to you. That has to do with then setback issues and height issues and some of those things, and encroachment on the neighbor versus allowing some people to be able to age in place, which we had some requests about that. And we have different parts of our community, some with the older, smaller lots, some with the bigger lots. Over here, you want to do something, you're really going to be infringing on some of the setback issues. Sometimes it's already built on the property line, like our garage is right now. And so how do we want to think about some of those things? And then the last one, which already kind of was talked about a little bit, and that's, Nick had talked about with the Swisher track, we got into those sort of discussions because it's currently zoned for single family homes. And so is that something that's what you want? And if not, but we saw this as an opportunity to be able to get some input from the community, not, again, a full-blown plan. And I know the mayor's been thinking about putting in for some sort of a grant or something perhaps. And others have been thinking about, what we might want to do with it. Again, we're not here to drive it, but ours is some things around the edges. Some of it is the cleaning up, some is the beautification. Do we want to have a place that might be a gazebo for picnicking? Do we want to have something that might be a playground? If we did, how do you do that in such a way that you don't infringe on the people that are already there? And if there need to be parking, all those things. Again, we're not here to make those decisions, but just to see, this is an opportunity to have some public input. And at the mayor's suggestion, we've involved the Metropolitan Planning Organization, the MPO, who's got a lot of experience. I was the director of the University Public Policy Center for 15 years, worked with the School of Planning and Public Affairs for all that time, done a lot of work with different planners. And so basically that's what their expertise is. And so they have offered their expertise to be able to hold the public hearings for us. And we thought that would be a better route to go rather than like doing a survey, because these things we thought really needed to have some discussion first. When we're talking about ADUs, that term's not going to mean anything. And so they can come in and explain, it can be all of these different kinds of things. And there are some guardrails that have been put in place, like in Iowa City, where they opened up access to more ADUs there, but they had rules such as the homeowner had to be living on site if you were going to have that mother-in-law's unit, for example. And so what we were told, but they've really run into no issues at all at that point. But that's something that we would, again, not saying that's what we should do, but there are ways of not just opening it all up so that you can do anything, but again, put some guardrails on so that within some rules, these things can be done. And then as long as it's comfortable that the enforcement can take place, if somebody turns it into a party haven or whatever, it's based on the use rather than necessarily of the zoning. So the MPO has agreed to work with us, and we're going to meet with them tomorrow with the zoning commission to be able to talk about how we want to do a public hearing. We'd like all of you to attend if you can, and so that you can hear, we don't know if 3 people are going to show up or the 30 people show up. And, we might decide we want to do a couple of these. And then after having something like that, might want to try to provide another way for some public input through the website or other things like that electronically. So that's really where we're at. We don't have a date yet set for when that would happen or how many they're going to be. Say we're going to be meeting with them tomorrow, but it felt like this was a good time to provide that feedback to you all since you had requested that we work on this. And any feedback that you have or any other issues that you think we might want to get some public feedback that you've been thinking about, this might be a good opportunity to do that.
And the meeting's tomorrow, the 13th at 7 p.m. And can you make it open so that it could be a Zoom?
Yeah, we're planning. It is scheduled. I wasn't going to take the owl down tonight, so I'll send all of you that Zoom link if you're able and want to sit in on it tomorrow night too. So
you can see how much work the zoning commission has done the last year. And then, there was a little bit of a delay because of November, December, January, the weather and things, and also the holidays. And so now they're full speed ahead. And I think it's really great, the issues they're taking on and moving forward with. And Pete, you've been such a great leader of the group. And any questions for him? Pete, now next time maybe you'll say, I want to be first in the meeting. Instead of saying, I'll just sit through the meeting and I'm fine.
Not a problem.
You got a great cross section of city government.
Yeah,
a few more issues in it than we usually do.
Not a problem.
But thank you so much for
you bet.
Coming to the council and explaining everything to them and all your work. Thank you.
You bet. And so tomorrow night, if you're pondering some things right now, please do show up. If you want to just email me, that's fine. Or Mike can contact Mike and just let me know if there are things that you're thinking about that you'd really like to get some feedback. It just seems like it's a good time to start collaborating on some of these things. So, all right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dean.
I'll be up here early,
now,
so whenever
did you have anything tonight?
No, and I've got stuff.
Very good. You like your report.
So I'll have that.
And then we'll go back to the engineer report. And Doug, did you want Ryan to start? With the engineer?
Sorry. Ryan's got everything, I think, all ready to go.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, how we doing? Thank you, Mayor. So I'll probably just go through a couple things briefly before we jump back to budget stuff. Just so Melrose Complete Street project, there is attached in my report an update from the design team from Blake Peterson, the project manager in there. I guess I hopefully everybody had a chance to review that. If there's any questions on that, certainly let me know. Process is basically just getting started. There's been some environmental work accomplished, and they'll expect. So the first thing is a concept statement to the DOT for the project concept statement, and that gets the project's process started with the DOT's overall process for the design. Automated traffic enforcement. Chief went over that pretty well, I think, describing where we're at with that. He's correct that there's, I believe most of the signs, if not all of them, are installed. The pole enclosure is installed, and now we're waiting on some of the equipment and then an answer on the Melrose camera pole. MS4 city storm sewer permit. So the city has an Iowa DNR permit, and so we've updated that and provided that report to the DNR this last month. Monroe Street improvements. I've been in contact with the contractor. They haven't been able to provide me an exact start date yet. I'm going to try and pin them down this week on that, and then communicate that to the residents on Monroe Street to begin that one up. Just as a reminder, we had a delay there due to relocation of a gas main, which was finished last fall. So, okay. I think that's pretty much it for my report there. For streets and sidewalks budget, so I put this together differently than it's been done in years past, and that was the kind of an implementation of a request we had from council last year to sort of show multiple fiscal years out. You know, I mean, a lot of cities would call this like a CIP plan, right? A 5-year CIP plan. So you can kind of schedule projects and expect the budget leading out multiple years for planning purposes. There's also a desire to see projects increase in size with a little bit more budget that's been available in order to kind of get better pricing per unit on everything, sort of that economy of scale concept again there. So you know, we've been increasing sort of the sizes compared to smaller patching projects that have been done in the past. And so that's where we're at with that budget list. I don't know if I need to go through every one or if anybody has any questions. I wanted to just see if there's any questions on specific projects. The Ridgeview Avenue and Highland Drive project was listed in the budget last year for the current fiscal year. Due to the delays to Monroe Street, since those are in the same vicinity and area, I'm really not anticipating completing that construction work this season to avoid a whole bunch of congestion to the same few blocks there. So the anticipation is we would move forward with design and then bid that this fall for construction next year. So that's why that's kind of showing as partially on this fiscal year and partially on the next. And then we had some Melrose Avenue panel replacements. That's not to be confused with the Melrose Avenue complete streets. The panel replacements listed there is focusing on the bike lanes uphill of where the reconstruction work for the complete streets project would occur. So this is kind of between Sunset and the bottom of the hill before the curve on Melrose. So, and then Oakcrest Avenue storm sewer intake repairs. The intakes, that's something that, you know, Doug's brought up to me along Oakcrest. There are a couple intakes that are in some pretty bad shape. They're damaged. They actually have holes in them. So they are sucking soil through them during heavy rain events and creating undermining behind the curves. And there's also some things like sump pumps that are discharging right behind the curbs nearby those intakes and not connected into them. So we would probably address those things with that work as well and get those things connected directly to the intakes since they're already out in the right of way. But that's a project that possibly could be lumped in with the Highland Drive work project plans because there's also asphalt work on both of those projects. So trying to coordinate those things together is why I've added that to this budget cycle, the current budget cycle. So, so I guess, yeah, I mean, surely let me know if there's any feedback on sort of which projects we're showing for this year, especially if there's a concern over particular ones, and if there's a desire for a focus in a different area sooner. We can get. try and work through
Okay,
that.
yeah. Are there any questions for Brian? Well, you'll encourage everyone to talk to you, anyone who wants to talk to
Yeah,
you about
yeah,
a
certainly,
project.
yeah,
And we
definitely.
can continue to talk about it some
Yeah.
more.
Mhm.
But, you know, I do like how you tried to map it out.
Yeah, hopefully that setup,
But I know some things will have to change, so.
what's up, yeah, I mean, it's all fluid and we can work through that, but. Hopefully the way that this read was understandable for everybody.
Yeah.
The way out there.
Doug, did you have anything else? I don't think that's.
No, no, I have nothing.
Thank you. And let's see, so we have e-government and Lisa sent around her written report.
I did, and I'm sorry, I should have asked this while it's here, but it's the, there's a meeting tomorrow. Should that be posted on the website or?
Yeah, it should be. I don't know if anybody can do that or not, but it should be, yeah.
Is there an agenda?
Hadn't really had much. I just that it's gonna, the MPO people are gonna present and just talk about what they were gonna do. Let me write something up tonight and get it to you so we can post it.
Okay. Any questions for Lisa?
I'm sure there's not.
The meeting tomorrow night isn't public.
No, it's zoning commission is meeting with MPO to talk about, because they're good at holding public meetings and making presentations. So they're going to walk through, here are the things we shared with ADUs when we did it in Iowa City. You know, here's how we typically deal with a group and try to get feedback. So that's what they're going to talk about.
It is a public meeting. I mean, someone else coming.
Yeah.
It's not like
yeah.
public hearing kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah, public meeting.
Yes.
There you go. Okay, very good.
We haven't scheduled it yet. So wanted to do it sometime this spring is what the zoning commission was saying.
So my report is just kind of a series of little announcements that you can put in.
Okay.
Okay.
Like
we back in April 15th.
they're all right up here in the screen, Lisa.
The home energy audit, which I may or may not, I don't know that necessarily needs to go on the website, but it's in their report and people eligible to sign up and I can search.
Thank you for doing that. Are there any questions? Okay, announcements. Any announcements?
Just said.
Is there any objection to adjournment? Hearing none, the meeting's adjourned by unanimous consent. Thanks, everyone.